Mistress destroyed millionaire husband's family, but pregnant wife's return changed everything. No one foresaw how easily wealth, ambition, and forbidden passion could entangle to destroy a once perfect marriage. A single spark of betrayal was all it took for speculation to become undeniable truth, scandalizing the affluent circles of Los Angeles. At the center stood a millionaire whose empire stretched from Beverly Hills to Dubai, confronted by haunting accusations that shattered trust within the walls of his lavish estate. Even close friends whispered in hushed tones for fear of fueling the growing rumor mill. Still, in the darkest hour, a pregnant wife's unannounced return carried the power to rewrite destiny or obliterate it completely. Jonathan Green appeared destined for success from the moment he set foot in the world. Born in a modest suburb of Houston, Texas, he witnessed struggle and resilience up close. His father, Marcus Green, was a Vietnam veteran who worked multiple jobs after returning stateside, determined that his children would have better futures. Jonathan's mother, Linda, juggled a graveyard shift at the local hospital, saving every penny she could to keep the family afloat. While Jonathan grew up with hand-me-downs and rationed groceries, there was no shortage of love. Marcus and Linda devoted themselves to ensuring he received an education, something neither had completed themselves. From an early age, Jonathan dazzled his teachers with remarkable aptitude, particularly in business and mathematics. He felt drawn to the idea of entrepreneurship, observing with keen interest whenever small businesses around town opened their doors. On weekends, he devoured biographies of business titans, Sam Walton, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, individuals who rose from adversity to transform entire industries. His life took a pivotal turn in his high school's final year. While awaiting college admissions results, Jonathan entered a statewide entrepreneurial pitch competition. He created a business plan for a community-centric fitness center, offering not just workout equipment but also childcare, nutritional advice, and counseling services. This approach was radical for the time, blending social outreach and profit-based enterprise. He didn't win first place. However, a local real estate investor named Mark Johnson, who was on the judging panel, noticed the strength of Jonathan's ideas and offered him a mentorship opportunity. By the time Jonathan graduated from the University of Texas with honors, he had already launched a small personal training business in Austin. It struggled through the early days. He often ate instant noodles to save on expenses, but grit became his ally. Within 2 years, he secured enough savings and small investments to open Green's Wellness, a full-fledged gym that rapidly attracted clientele. Buoyed by local success, Jonathan expanded, forging partnerships with nutrition experts and mental health counselors. In an era of hyper-competitive fitness chains, his distinctive holistic approach carved out a niche market. Yet, while his professional star rose, it was his personal life that gave him unwavering purpose. He had started dating Catherine Taylor in college, drawn to her warmth, empathy, and quiet intelligence. Catherine had grown up in a middle-class household in San Diego, where her father taught high school literature and her mother worked as a freelance artist. She had inherited her father's love for reading, which endowed her with a soft-spoken wisdom that balanced Jonathan's ambition perfectly. Their relationship was solid, built on deep mutual respect. She offered him stability when his boundless drive sometimes threatened to overshoot practicality. They married soon after Jonathan expanded to a second gym. The wedding itself was small, a gathering of close friends and family on the outskirts of Austin. Mark Johnson, the investor who had first spotted Jonathan's potential, was there to witness the union. Within a few years, Jonathan's endeavors evolved into a multi-state chain of fitness centers, stretching from Texas to Colorado. Articles in business journals lauded Green's wellness as a model for the future of integrated fitness, praising its combination of high-end equipment, mental health resources, and child-friendly zones. Nevertheless, with success came new temptations. Jonathan was traveling more frequently, forging alliances with major investors, exploring expansions, and meeting people who existed in spheres of greater wealth and influence than he'd previously known. Catherine supported him wholeheartedly, though deep down she hoped for a time when he would slow down enough to save a life alongside her. By the time Jonathan hit his 30s, his chain of integrated fitness centers was valued at over $200 million. He and Catherine relocated to Beverly Hills. Nestled in the canyons overlooking Los Angeles, their Spanish-style estate boasted 10 bedrooms, a sprawling garden, and a lavish outdoor pool that had once been featured in a home design magazine. That same year, Catherine gave birth to their son, Henry. Despite her exhaustion, Catherine glowed with maternal fulfillment, fervently hoping that this arrival would encourage Jonathan to take a step back from his non-stop lifestyle. But ambition never loosened its grip on Jonathan. New expansions beckoned, a set of boutique gyms on the East Coast, partnerships with wellness bloggers in Europe, and even the possibility of going public. Conferences, corporate events, and exclusive parties soon dominated Jonathan's schedule. Catherine adapted in the beginning. She managed the household, curated philanthropic events, and cultivated a supportive environment for Henry. The shift in their marriage was subtle. Instead of gazing lovingly into each other's eyes at dinner, they found themselves constantly checking phones or discussing business strategies between bites. Catherine took pride in her role. She believed wholeheartedly in Jonathan's dream and wanted him to achieve greatness. There were fleeting, tender moments, Henry's bedtime rituals, holiday getaways to Hawaii, or spontaneous date nights. But such intervals grew increasingly rare. Finally, Catherine summoned the courage to address her concerns. One evening, after Henry's first birthday party, she confessed her fears of drifting apart. Jonathan listened earnestly, recognizing the truth in her words. He promised to spend fewer nights at corporate dinners, fewer weekends at exclusive golf outings with potential investors. For a short while, it worked. He was more present, more affectionate. Catherine harbored cautious optimism that their relationship would withstand the pressures of growing wealth and business commitments. At the beginning of Jonathan's push into the international market, he needed a potent legal mind to navigate the complexities. His usual team had served him well, but each new country's regulations were a labyrinth. That was when Mark Johnson, who remained his trusted advisor, recommended an exceptional young attorney named Bianca Street James. Bianca, only in her late 20s, had a striking reputation in corporate law circles. She had attended Harvard Law on scholarship, dazzled her professors, and leapfrogged from a junior associate to partner in record time at a revered Los Angeles firm. The first meeting took place in a newly leased conference room at a glossy high-rise in Century City. Catherine was not present, busy with Henry at home. Jonathan sat across from a woman with raven black hair tied in a sleek bun, a crisp designer blazer, and a remarkable poise that belied her relatively young age. She spoke with quiet confidence, articulating a vision for how to protect Jonathan's interests abroad, structure licensing agreements, and handle shareholder expansions if he ever decided to go public. There was no immediate, obvious spark of romantic tension. Rather, Jonathan was impressed by her intellect and composure. Over the next few months, Bianca became indispensable to the company. She outlined global compliance roadmaps, streamlined existing legal frameworks, and deftly mediated disputes among potential partners. Jonathan often praised her intuitive brilliance, convinced she was a linchpin for his company's future success. Catherine heard about Bianca though only in the context of Jonathan's legal expansions. She was pleased that her husband had found someone competent to lighten his load. However, at social gatherings, certain whispers circulated Bianca was known to be alluring, a lawyer whose charm extended beyond the courtroom. Several acquaintances teased Jonathan half-jokingly about being careful around such a captivating professional. He brushed off the suggestions, claiming that nothing overshadowed his devotion to Catherine. Bianca's involvement grew deeper. She began traveling with Jonathan for critical negotiations in New York, London, and later Dubai, where a potential joint venture with Middle Eastern investors promised unimaginable returns. Catherine found it odd that her husband's previously sporadic text messages became even more irregular. When she asked him about it, Jonathan insisted the workload tripled once foreign backers entered the picture. He was quick to dismiss any suggestion of impropriety, reaffirming his love for Catherine and Henry. But Catherine's unease only heightened when Jonathan didn't return home for Henry's second birthday. She had arranged a small celebration, expecting Jonathan's flight to land that afternoon. A last-minute negotiation crisis in Dubai derailed his plans. He FaceTimed Henry from a sterile hotel lobby, apologizing repeatedly, promising to make it up to them. Catherine forced a smile in front of Henry. After the call, she locked herself in the bedroom to cry. This was the first major milestone Jonathan had missed, and the sting of disappointment was profound. Bianca's existence loomed larger in Catherine's mind. During that same period, she began seeing more pictures of Jonathan in tabloids, rubbing shoulders with celebrities, attending black tie events in European capitals, often with a woman by his side who could only be Bianca. Although Catherine tried to reassure herself that these appearances were purely business, doubt seeped in. She had never seen Jonathan look so vibrant and engaged in photos, as though a new passion fueled him. Could it be the excitement of the big deals? Or was it something or someone else? What started innocently late dinners in foreign locales, intense strategy sessions that stretched into the early hours, slipped into uncharted territory. One fateful night in Paris, Jonathan and Bianca were celebrating a successful meeting with potential partners. A wave of relief and exhilaration pulsed through Jonathan as they sealed a deal believed to be worth over $100 million. After multiple glasses of wine at a Michelin-starred restaurant, they wandered along the Seine. Paris at night felt dreamlike. The city glimmered with romance. Conversation turned personal, weaving between stories of their past struggles and the pressures they each faced. By midnight, the tension was palpable. Jonathan felt both liberated and weighed down freedom from the constant hustle of American boardrooms, yet guilt for the attraction he sensed. A part of him recognized the boundary he was about to cross, but reason slipped away in the face of intoxication and Bianca's unwavering admiration. Beneath a flickering street lamp, they kissed, a fleeting moment laced with both passion and foreboding. That one slip became a pivotal turning point. Jonathan told himself it was a mistake, a drunken lapse in judgment, but as days turned into weeks, the emotional intimacy with Bianca deepened. Their phone calls stretched from legal briefs into personal confessions. Their text messages carried subtle suggestions of longing. A secret room in Jonathan's heart formed, one that Catherine neither knew nor had access to. At first, Jonathan's guilt made him more attentive when he returned to Beverly Hills. He lavished Catherine with extravagant gifts, handcrafted jewelry, designer bags, limited edition perfumes. He redoubled his involvement at home, cooking dinner for her and Henry on a few occasions. Yet, these abrupt gestures felt performative to Catherine. She appreciated the attention but couldn't shake a sense of something lurking beneath the surface. Multiple times, Catherine found Jonathan's phone locked tight, placed face-down practices that were new. Before, Jonathan had nothing to hide. She could pick up his phone freely if it rang. Now he clutched it, reacting nervously whenever she glanced toward it. Late-night text alerts, suspicious disclaimers about time zone differences, and occasional hushed phone conversations behind closed doors all fueled Catherine's anxiety. She tried asking him directly. Jonathan denied any wrongdoing, explaining away his secrecy as a necessity for high-stakes negotiations. Catherine, wanting to trust her husband, tried to subdue her mounting worries. She told herself that working with international investors necessitated confidentiality. Still, the uneasy whispers in her mind refused to be silenced. During an unseasonably chilly Los Angeles winter, Catherine fell ill with a severe flu. She was confined to bed, feverish and weak, while Henry stayed with Catherine's mother in San Diego to avoid catching the virus. Rather than remain by her side, Jonathan claimed a crucial meeting in Toronto demanded his presence. Catherine felt abandoned. She needed him at home, but he departed anyway, with Bianca naturally accompanying him. Catherine spent lonely days recovering in the quiet house, feeling her husband drift further. Upon his return, Jonathan was distant, as though his mind still floated somewhere in the realm of business deals and clandestine longing. Catherine decided they needed to speak to a marriage counselor, suspecting that their unaddressed issues had grown too large to handle alone. Jonathan, surprisingly, agreed. He recognized that Catherine was not wrong about their emotional gulf. In the early sessions, they tiptoed around the real cause Jonathan's affair with Bianca. He rationalized his distance by citing overwork and the pressure of massive expansions. Catherine tearfully admitted feeling pushed aside and unsupported. The counselor urged Jonathan to re-examine his priorities, but the sessions only scraped the surface. Jonathan dreaded the idea of losing Catherine or hurting Henry, yet he couldn't bring himself to sever ties with Bianca, who had burrowed deep into his psyche. One evening, Catherine received a phone call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, calm yet laced with urgency, declared she had proof. Jonathan was having an affair. Catherine's heart pounded, her mind reeling. She tried to maintain composure, demanding to know who was calling. The person refused to identify herself, only saying she was an insider who disliked how Bianca manipulated men in positions of power. Sure enough, an email arrived shortly afterward containing photos of Jonathan and Bianca stepping out of an upscale London hotel, locked in an unmistakably intimate embrace. Captions pointed out the date when Jonathan had told Catherine he was stuck in overnight business meetings. Additional images showed them having dinner alone at a dimly lit table, leaning across a candle to share a tender moment. Stomach churning, Catherine realized that her worst suspicions paled compared to the harsh reality. Rage and heartbreak consumed her. She confronted Jonathan immediately. Forced to see photographic evidence, he could no longer hide behind clever words. He fell silent at first, then stuttered through apologetic pleas. Catherine, tears in her eyes, demanded the full truth. Between sobs, Jonathan confessed that he felt trapped by the affair but unable to stop. He swore he still loved Catherine and was ashamed of what he had done. He promised to end it now. But Catherine's fury knew no bounds. She yelled at him for the lies, for stealing precious moments away from Henry, for humiliating her before the entire city, maybe even the entire world. Once gossip spread. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, Jonathan offered to cut ties with Bianca professionally and personally. Catherine, reeling from betrayal, demanded separation until he proved his sincerity. She moved to a suite at a nearby luxury hotel with Henry, leaving the estate that same night. Rumors of Jonathan's infidelity soon trickled into the business world. Certain shareholders questioned if the scandal might undermine the brand's wholesome reputation. Mark Johnson confronted Jonathan, disappointed that he had jeopardized not only his marriage but potentially his entire corporate legacy. Bianca, however, was not content to vanish without a fight. She had invested her skills in Green's wellness, forging alliances with key international investors. She insinuated she deserved more compensation or an elevated role in the corporate structure as a reward for her contributions. Jonathan found himself cornered. He wanted Bianca out of his life, but she threatened to reveal damaging details of the shortcuts and borderline unethical deals he had authorized to ensure swift overseas expansions. If she went public with proof, legal actions and financial ruin could follow. Panicked, Jonathan tried to placate her, offering hush money or a position in a separate venture. Bianca refused, hinting that she wanted a far bigger piece of his business and possibly him officially. Meanwhile, Catherine, still reeling from betrayal, lived in limbo. She sought the counsel of attorneys, uncertain if she should file for divorce. She also visited a therapist who specialized in marital trauma. Henry, barely 3 years old, sensed the tension. Catherine felt torn between rage at Jonathan's betrayal and a deep-seated desire to preserve her family. Despite everything, she couldn't deny that she loved the man who once shared her dreams. In the midst of this emotional maelstrom, Catherine began feeling unwell nausea, lightheadedness, exhaustion. Initially, she chalked it up to stress, but as days turned to weeks, she decided to buy a pregnancy test. The result was positive. Catherine's emotions churned in a storm of shock, fear, and a glimmer of joy. Another child was on the way, conceived before she learned of Jonathan's affair. Conflicted, she considered hiding the pregnancy, at least temporarily. She wasn't sure if Jonathan deserved to know, given the heartbreak he caused. Yet she also recognized the child's right to a father. Ultimately, she called him, voice trembling, and shared the news. Jonathan was stunned into silence. Then a wave of relief or happiness came through. He said he wanted to be fully present this time, that he'd do whatever it took to mend the damage. Catherine felt uncertain, but part of her wanted to believe him. Catherine's pregnancy forced Jonathan to accelerate his efforts to extricate Bianca from his life. Yet, Bianca sensed Jonathan's panic. Leveraging it to her advantage, she demanded an official statement presenting her as a critical legal partner in Green's wellness for years to come. She let slip that she had in her possession emails, recorded calls, and financial documents implicating Jonathan in unethical expansions. If he didn't comply, she would systematically release them to the authorities, tarnishing both his personal and professional reputations. Feeling trapped, Jonathan attempted to gather his loyal allies within the company. He organized clandestine meetings with Mark Johnson and other sympathetic investors, laying out Bianca's blackmail. They concluded that the only way to remove Bianca's leverage was to build a stronger case against her evidence of her own misdeeds. After all, Bianca wasn't exactly innocent. She had orchestrated certain deals that skirted international laws. If they could prove her complicity, they might neutralize her threat. While Jonathan orchestrated these behind-the-scenes maneuvers, Catherine's maternal instincts outweighed her anger. She began contacting private investigators, hoping to compile information about Bianca's background. Catherine discovered that Bianca had a history of entangling herself with wealthy, influential men who advanced her career. No previous case had garnered as much attention or gone public, but whispers implied she'd always exit. These liaisons significantly richer. Catherine shared her findings with Jonathan and Mark Johnson, galvanizing them to push forward with a plan. Despite a flicker of hope that Jonathan might overcome the crisis, Catherine grew overwhelmed. With each passing day, tabloids circled like vultures, broadcasting rumors about an illicit affair and a million-dollar mistress. Determined to shield Henry, Catherine left Beverly Hills and returned to her parents' home in San Diego, where she could find emotional support. She believed distance might offer clarity, Jonathan promised to visit on weekends, but business and the Bianca quagmire often demanded his time. In San Diego, Catherine experienced a quieter routine. She joined a prenatal yoga class, something she never did when pregnant with Henry. She reconnected with old friends who reminded her of the self she had been before wealth consumed her life. Nevertheless, heartbreak lingered in every quiet moment. She missed the partner she once had. She felt abandoned, carrying the heavy weight of a child whose father might not be present in the ways she had imagined. Jonathan attempted to contact Catherine daily, though she frequently ignored his calls. He sent gifts, flowers, letters, even a new car. Catherine accepted none of it, stating that she wanted meaningful changes, not material distractions. The separation loomed over Jonathan like a penance. He recognized how drastically he had failed Catherine and Henry, how he'd let his hunger for success overshadow vows of loyalty. The investigation into Bianca's wrongdoing progressed slower than Jonathan would have liked. Fear gnawed at him every night, the dread that Bianca might leak incriminating files, or worse, reveal personal photos of them together. He knew the scandal could obliterate the goodwill he had built over a decade, leaving him penniless and disgraced. Eventually, Jonathan mustered the courage to propose a direct confrontation. He convened a meeting at a private villa in Malibu, inviting Bianca, Mark Johnson, and several key investors. The goal was to orchestrate Bianca's exit on negotiated terms, money, references, while protecting the company. Bianca arrived with a smirk, clearly ready to demand the moon in exchange for her silence. But Mark Johnson launched the meeting by reading out a list of transactions that tied Bianca to potential money laundering, shell companies, and more. Her face blanched. She realized they had gathered substantial evidence. Blackmailing Jonathan wasn't going to be as straightforward as she expected. Rather than concede immediately, Bianca stormed out, threatening to retaliate in ways none of them could imagine. Fearful of how far Bianca might go, Jonathan drove to San Diego. Catherine's father, Joseph Taylor, greeted him at the doorstep with a pained expression, reminding Jonathan of the heartbreak he had inflicted. Nonetheless, Catherine agreed to see him. Over tea in the living room, Jonathan poured out his anguish. He explained how he was working to sever Bianca's hold, how regrets consumed him night and day, how he wanted to earn Catherine's trust once more. Catherine listened quietly, tears brimming. Their conversation stretched into late evening. For the first time in months, Catherine felt Jonathan speak from the heart, not from a place of guilt or damage control. She agreed to return to Los Angeles under one condition: he would arrange for a comprehensive therapy approach, joint marriage counseling, personal counseling for himself, and a plan to ensure the unborn child would never experience the turmoil Henry did. Jonathan, tears in his eyes, vowed to do everything necessary. With her second pregnancy entering its second trimester, Catherine traveled back to Beverly Hills. The estate felt haunted by old memories, yet Jonathan made tangible changes. He relocated corporate functions away from home. He handed more responsibilities to trusted executives, reducing the frantic pace that once consumed him. True to his promise, he engaged with a renowned therapist specializing in high-profile marital conflicts. Catherine and Jonathan resumed counseling, this time tackling the affair head-on. Sessions were emotionally charged. Catherine revealed how deeply the betrayal cut her, how the illusions of their perfect family disintegrated overnight. Jonathan faced the ugliness of his choices, the emptiness in him that no amount of money or success had been able to fill. Slowly, the rawness they had avoided addressing was exposed, and they set about clearing the rubble to reconstruct whatever was left. Just as Jonathan and Catherine began moving toward a semblance of stability, Bianca launched her final strike. An anonymous blog appeared online, detailing Jonathan's private expansions, painting him as a ruthless entrepreneur who'd engaged in hush-money deals, bribery, and even insider trading. The blog included screenshots of questionable emails, some real, some possibly fabricated. The mainstream press latched onto the sensational headlines: Green's wellness empire in turmoil, billionaire's illicit deals exposed. Jonathan spent sleepless nights meeting with crisis management teams, issuing statements and cooperating with authorities to prove his innocence. Catherine felt the stress weigh on her, convinced the unborn child absorbed every morsel of tension. If not for the newly rebuilt emotional rapport with Jonathan, she might have fled again. Yet she stayed, standing beside him at press conferences, portraying a united front. Privately, Catherine wept at the unrelenting barrage, questioning if peace would ever come. On the legal front, Mark Johnson's team worked feverishly, producing evidence that discredited many of the allegations. Where Jonathan had made borderline ethical choices, they uncovered mitigating circumstances or highlighted Bianca's complicit role. Their strategy was to shift blame onto Bianca for orchestrating the unscrupulous expansions. Some legal experts believed the plan might hold up in court, especially if they proved blackmail. A stroke of unexpected fortune arrived when a former associate of Bianca's came forward, prepared to testify that Bianca manipulated documents and orchestrated questionable deals. This gave Jonathan's legal team the ammunition they needed. Bianca, sensing the tides turning, tried to broker a deal. She would retract the blog, release a statement clearing Jonathan, and vanish from the corporate scene if Jonathan agreed to an 8-figure payoff. Instead, Jonathan's lawyers, along with local authorities, filed a lawsuit against Bianca, alleging embezzlement, fraud, and defamation. The lawsuit was accompanied by a restraining order preventing Bianca from approaching Jonathan or Catherine. The news shook the legal community as Bianca's once meteoric rise now plummeted in a swirl of scandal. She faced the real possibility of losing her law license and enduring a criminal investigation. With Bianca legally cornered, Jonathan's business stabilized gradually. Some investors were wary, but the brand still held strong. Jonathan held a press conference, acknowledging mistakes and vowing stricter oversight. He expressed gratitude for Catherine's support in a heartfelt speech. While cynics dismissed it as damage control, those close to the family saw genuine contrition. Meanwhile, Catherine's pregnancy advanced to its final trimester. She and Jonathan inched closer to a place of renewed intimacy. Trust, however, was fragile. Catherine insisted on open discussions about Jonathan's regrets, fears, and the personal demons that led him astray. Jonathan, for his part, showed unprecedented vulnerability, revealing how a relentless drive to succeed sometimes masked deeper insecurities. Counselor sessions shifted from resentment-laden blame to exploring ways they could forge a healthier partnership. Henry, now nearing 4, sensed the warmer atmosphere at home. He cuddled more easily with both parents. Catherine, waddling with her growing belly, often read bedtime stories while Jonathan listened in. The family started hosting modest dinners, reintegrating themselves into social circles while emphasizing simpler joys: quality time, laughter, emotional transparency. During one of these evenings, Mark Johnson joined them for dinner. Over a glass of red wine, he reminisced about discovering Jonathan's talents during that long-ago high school pitch contest. He told Catherine that even then, he sensed Jonathan's potential for greatness. But Mark also noted that ambition without wisdom could be destructive, an echo of everything that had transpired. Jonathan, who once bristled at paternal lectures, accepted Mark's words with humility. After dinner, Catherine and Mark shared a private conversation in the garden. Mark, paternal in tone, thanked Catherine for returning. He believed that her unwavering loyalty would be the saving grace for Jonathan. Catherine admitted she harbored resentment, yet clung to hope that her marriage could evolve into something stronger and more authentic. Mark parted that night, confident he had witnessed the seeds of genuine healing. In the final month of Catherine's pregnancy, tension hovered. The memory of how Jonathan missed Henry's earlier milestones weighed heavily on him, intensifying his resolve to be present for this birth. When Catherine's contractions began late one evening, Jonathan was by her side. They rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Hours of labor followed, culminating in the early morning cry of a baby girl whom they named Emma Elizabeth Green. The moment Jonathan cut the umbilical cord, tears streamed down his cheeks. For Catherine, exhaustion intermingled with relief and a cautious sense of renewal. She saw Jonathan cradle Emma with trembling arms, voice filled with wonder. Family visited, congratulating them on a healthy newborn. The atmosphere felt surreal less than a year prior. Scandal threatened to tear them apart. Yet here they were, forging new memories within the same domain of wealth and paparazzi-laden streets. Although Emma's birth brought light, the Bianca scandal continued in the background. A preliminary hearing loomed where Bianca faced serious charges. Jonathan and Catherine dreaded the possibility of testifying, but their attorneys insisted it might be necessary. The media, still enthralled by the billionaire's scandalous affair, occasionally snapped photos of Jonathan entering the courthouse for pre-trial discussions. In a twist that spared the couple further public scrutiny, Bianca's attorneys negotiated a plea deal. She admitted partial responsibility for the false blog posts and leaked documents in exchange for reduced charges. Ultimately, Bianca lost her law license and faced a hefty fine, but avoided lengthy jail time. She left Los Angeles soon after, her reputation in shambles. For Jonathan and Catherine, closure arrived not through vengeance, but through Bianca's final disappearance from through life. The weeks after Emma's arrival were a whirlwind of late-night feedings, diaper changes, and Henry's early attempts at big brother interactions. Catherine and Jonathan discovered a joint joy in the mundane aspects of parenting things, once overshadowed by extravagant wealth. Jonathan would lull Emma to sleep at 3 a.m, hum lullabies, and reflect on how swiftly he had nearly destroyed such a precious gift. In therapy, they recognized that illusions of perfection had set them on a dangerous path. Jonathan's unstoppable ambition, combined with Catherine's willingness to remain in the background, created space for unaddressed emotional needs. A slow, methodical rebuilding of trust became their priority, one anchored in daily transparency, shared schedules, open finances, heartfelt conversations about insecurities. Still, Catherine felt occasional pangs of suspicion whenever Jonathan had late meetings. She overcame them through honest dialogue. Jonathan, in turn, needed constant reassurance that Catherine was truly committed to forgiving him. Rebuilding was not a single moment of absolution, but an ongoing process, requiring empathy and patience. Months passed, and Catherine suggested they move from Beverly Hills. While the estate had once symbolized success, it now carried memories of betrayal. She proposed a quieter area, perhaps a ranch on the outskirts of Santa Barbara or a coastal home near Laguna Beach. Jonathan, initially hesitant, realized how significantly the environment shaped their emotional state. They eventually settled on a modern yet cozy house in Montecito, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Less glitzy than Beverly Hills, it offered a tranquil environment to raise their children. Henry adapted to the new location swiftly, marveling at the rocky beaches and enjoying a more laid-back routine. Emma giggled in the arms of her parents, oblivious to the turmoil that had almost prevented her from arriving into a stable family. Catherine, still coping with the residual heartbreak, found solace in creating a warm, welcoming home that reflected their new commitment. In Montecito, Jonathan restructured his business approach. The scandal taught him that relentless expansion without ethics or stability was a recipe for catastrophe. He established a philanthropic branch within Green's Wellness, funding community-based fitness and mental health initiatives in underserved regions. Catherine pitched in, using her empathy and organizational skills to spearhead local charity events. Their philanthropic synergy did more than burnish the company's public image. It reminded them both of the deeper reasons they had pursued success in the first place. That year, Jonathan declined multiple invitations to keynote international conferences, prioritizing time at home. He woke early to jog along the coast with Catherine, prepared breakfast for Henry, and played with Emma on a quilt in the living room. Catherine took up painting, a hobby she had abandoned amidst the chaos of high society life. The gentle brushstrokes, capturing Montecito's sunrises and pastoral hills, provided a therapeutic release. Mark Johnson and other old colleagues visited periodically, struck by Jonathan's calmer demeanor. Some teased him about finally learning to slow down. Others expressed relief that scandal no longer overshadowed his philanthropic expansions. Catherine felt the subtle difference too. Jonathan was no longer the restless man scanning phone notifications at dinner. He engaged, listened, and embraced fatherhood wholeheartedly. As time marched on, even tabloids lost interest. The name Bianca Street James no longer appeared in sensational headlines. Instead, articles highlighted Green's wellness philanthropic projects or commented on how Catherine and Jonathan seemed stronger than ever, the couple that overcame heartbreak. Some praised Catherine for her grace under intense scrutiny, while Jonathan garnered cautious admiration for confronting his failings and emerging reformed. In the privacy of their Montecito home, Catherine and Jonathan often spoke candidly. They didn't shy from the memory of Bianca or Jonathan's betrayal. Those wounds, though scarred over, served as a stark reminder of how fragile devotion could be. In acknowledging the darkness, they made space for deeper understanding. A once gilded marriage, overshadowed by routine and ambition, now sparkled with a new authenticity, albeit shaped by struggle. On Emma's first birthday, Catherine and Jonathan organized a small gathering in their new home. Family and trusted friends arrived, celebrating the milestone. A toddler's delight transformed the living room into a sea of pastel balloons and laughter. Henry, now 5, served as a proud older brother, carefully showing Emma how to unwrap her gifts. Catherine's parents drove up from San Diego, tearful yet joyful, to see how far their daughter and son-in-law had come. Mark Johnson flew in from New York, excited to witness a serene, content side of Jonathan that once seemed impossible. Over slices of homemade cake, conversation flowed about how rapidly life can change and how people adapt. Jonathan privately thanked Mark for standing by him despite the scandal's potential to harm the company. Mark responded with paternal warmth, observing that a strong moral compass could guide a person through even the stormiest seas. Catherine, overhearing, felt gratitude wash over her. In a swirl of pink wrapping paper and children's giggles, she thought about how close they had been to losing all of this. Catherine sometimes revisited the swirl of emotions that accompanied her second pregnancy rage: betrayal, uncertainty about the future. Now, as Emma tottered around the living room in her new shoes, Catherine felt a surge of pride for having mustered the courage to reclaim her life. She recognized her own resilience. She had confronted heartbreak, demanded reforms, and found the strength to protect herself and her children. In a quiet moment that evening, she and Jonathan stood on the balcony. The horizon glowed with a crimson sunset. Catherine gently laced her fingers through his. "Do you ever regret it all?" she asked, her eyes fixed on the fading sun. Jonathan swallowed, recalling the anguish he had wrought. "I regret hurting you," he murmured. "I regret letting greed and vanity blind me. But seeing how we've grown, even with the scars, I know we've built something more real now." Catherine nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. The gentle hum of the ocean waves below carried away some of the lingering ache in her heart. A few months after Emma's birthday, Jonathan surprised Catherine with an idea. They should renew their wedding vows, symbolically embracing a fresh chapter. Catherine hesitated at first, wondering if it was necessary. Ultimately, the concept resonated. They decided on an intimate beach ceremony at dusk, accompanied only by their closest circle. Catherine's mother fashioned a simple floral arch on the sand. Henry walked hand in hand with Emma, scattering rose petals as they giggled at the surf. Mark Johnson stood as Jonathan's best man, while Catherine's best friend, Aria Kinsley, served as maid of honor. When Jonathan recited his vows, tears clouded his vision. He spoke of the mistakes he had made, the lessons learned, and the unwavering hope he held for their shared future. Catherine responded with quiet grace, acknowledging her heartbreak and her choice to forgive, not out of weakness, but out of courage to see what they could become. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they embraced, sealing their commitment with a kiss that tasted of salt air and redemption. In the months that followed, Catherine occasionally encountered passing references to Bianca in the press rumors that she lived in Europe under a different name, or that she might be attempting to rebuild her career in another field. But these mentions were so minor they scarcely ruffled Catherine or Jonathan. Their focus lay on the present, nurturing Emma's blossoming personality, guiding Henry through his early school years, and balancing their philanthropic responsibilities with a cherished family life. Green's wellness shifted towards sustainability and mental health advocacy. Catherine joined the board, championing postpartum support programs and free counseling for disadvantaged mothers. Each time they co-hosted a charity gala, they remembered the misguided extravagance that once fueled Jonathan's ambition. Now, events served a purpose beyond status or networking. They were about giving back, healing, connecting. On weekends, Jonathan turned off his phone and joined Henry on imaginative backyard adventures, forging the father-son bond they had lacked for years. When Emma, age 2, waddled into his lap one morning while Catherine made breakfast, Jonathan felt a contentment he realized he'd never fully experienced in all those years of relentless striving. Here, cradled in daily joys, was a genuine sense of wealth surpassing any transaction or corporate triumph. Every so often, memories of the turbulence threatened to resurface. Catherine would catch Jonathan staring pensively at old photos or reading a snippet of scandal gossip with a distant look. They discussed it openly, refusing to let lingering shame or regret corrode their new foundation. If anything, acknowledging the pain reaffirmed how hard they had fought to stand where they did. It wasn't about erasing the past, but harnessing it as a fulcrum for a more mindful future. Catherine's father once told her, "Forgiveness isn't about pretending the scars don't exist. It's about seeing the scar and choosing to keep living." Indeed, the experience etched permanent marks on their spirits, but it also clarified how easily illusions can tear relationships apart and how unwavering resolve can stitch them together again. Years went by, and Henry entered elementary school as Emma toddled into preschool. Catherine and Jonathan thrived in roles that blended leadership with humility. Jonathan was the CEO who championed ethical expansions. Catherine was a philanthropic director, bridging local communities with Green's wellness. They traveled together more often, sometimes bringing the children along to events. They scaled expansions carefully, ensuring time for family dinners, bedtime stories, and annual vacations. When Henry turned 8, Catherine asked him about his earliest memory. He mentioned snippets of a big house. He barely recalled, some tension he didn't understand. She recognized it as the period she had moved away. Catherine inhaled deeply, relieved that Henry's recollections were largely overshadowed by the stable, loving environment they cultivated after Emma's birth. Periodically, Catherine recalled the initial heartbreak, a swirl of paparazzi, that email with incriminating photos, the nights she sobbed while Henry slept at her mother's. Despite the anguish, she also saw how adversity had become their teacher. She taught Henry and Emma the virtues of honesty and compassion, hoping they would learn from mistakes she and Jonathan once made. Freed from illusions of perfect marital bliss, she embraced the real depth that emerged only after confronting their darkest moment. As Catherine walked along the shoreline with Jonathan one evening, the kids safely tucked in bed, they mused on life's twists. Where once their estate bristled with emptiness, the Montecito home was now filled with children's laughter and the fragrance of baked treats Catherine loved making. Jonathan's phone no longer incessantly buzzed. He valued the hush of the ocean, the briny air, and the simple pleasure of holding hands with the woman he almost lost. Catherine leaned into him, recalling their vow renewal. She asked, "Do you ever worry about us losing track again?" Jonathan tightened his arm around her shoulder. "Not the same way," he whispered. "We know too well where that road leads." They strolled in comfortable silence, aware that while no future was guaranteed, they had forged a partnership capable of weathering storms. The estate in Beverly Hills, where Bianca once roamed, was sold. The proceeds partly funded their philanthropic foundation and partly established college trusts for Henry and Emma. Every now and then, old acquaintances brought up the scandal, referencing it as a cautionary tale about greed and temptation. Catherine and Jonathan never boasted. Instead, they quietly lived out a transformation that had turned betrayal into a fresh chance for authentic devotion. In time, Mark Johnson retired, entrusting part of his investment firm to Jonathan. Younger executives stepped up in Green's wellness, bringing fresh energy. Catherine remained a comforting anchor, ensuring each new initiative aligned with the soul of the business: well-being, empathy, community. In each philanthropic event they organized, people witnessed a synergy formed not by the pursuit of fame, but by an acknowledgement of the power of second chances. As Emma neared 5 and Henry prepared for middle school, the memory of the mistress who nearly wrecked their family seemed distant. Yet Catherine occasionally flipped through an old journal, reading entries from those harrowing days. She revisited the raw heartbreak, uncertain if she had done the right thing by returning. Her journal's last lines from that period read, "I choose love, but never again at the expense of my own dignity." That sentiment encapsulated how their marriage had evolved, love tempered by self-respect and honesty. Jonathan, for his part, remained attuned to Catherine's emotional signals, ensuring he never repeated the behaviors that led him astray. He recognized the privilege of redemption was not something to be squandered. Neighbors in Montecito rarely pried. The community valued privacy, giving them space to exist as a normal family. Sometimes Catherine found it surreal that a near-catastrophic affair turned into an impetus for profound personal and relational growth. But as she tucked Emma into bed, reading bedtime stories about heroes who overcame dragons and curses, she realized life's real villain had been complacency, secrecy, and unchecked ambition. Now, as she watched Jonathan kneel beside her, helping Emma pronounce tricky words, she felt thankful for the journey. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was a testament to resilience, shaped by tears, confessions, therapy sessions, and new beginnings. Ultimately, Catherine understood that real love could endure, provided both partners remained committed to facing the truth even when it was painful. Decades later, the Green family's story would be recounted in local circles as an example of heartbreak turned to triumph. The scandal became a footnote, overshadowed by the philanthropic success of Green's wellness and the lasting positivity. Jonathan and Catherine spread through community work. In the final assessment, Bianca's intrusion had threatened everything. Yet Catherine's return, pregnant and determined, forced truths into the open, setting the stage for sincere transformation. The crisis revealed the cracks in their marriage, but also unleashed the will to rebuild it stronger than ever. Catherine's bravery in demanding respect, Jonathan's willingness to reform, and the impetus of a growing family formed the bedrock of their renewal. The public might have called it a Hollywood drama, but for Jonathan and Catherine, it was simply the story of how a betrayal opened their eyes to the necessity of honesty and love. Each day they awakened, greeted the children, and faced the challenges of life. They bore witness to the resilience that rose from the ashes of heartbreak. Mistress destroyed the millionaire's family? Perhaps. But the pregnant wife's return changed everything, restoring the family's soul and proving that genuine love, once tested, could blaze back even brighter than before. Moments of betrayal can devastate, yet they can also spark the courage to rebuild. Jonathan and Catherine endured heartbreak they never anticipated, propelled by ambition and a deceptive third party who nearly shattered their world. Yet through honest confrontation, painful therapy sessions, and unwavering commitment to their children, they discovered the power of redemption. Old illusions gave way to transparency and renewed devotion. If this journey resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. By spreading this story, you remind others that survival and growth are possible even in the face of profound betrayal. Let Jonathan and Catherine's transformation become a testament. Real love isn't about perfection, but about confronting darkness, making amends, and standing stronger together. Join us again for more heart-stirring tales that reveal how hope can rise when everything seems lost, lighting a path toward healing for every wounded soul willing to fight for it.